a pretty good day in the market today. You'll see a sea of green looking at TradingView's heat map here. And Bitcoin's also rising today following a recent ascending channel. However, we are also reaching a longer term resistance. Looking at this longer term trend, this descending channel, we are now reaching the resistance on it. In my opinion, Bitcoin needs to break this resistance, otherwise we're heading back down. I think there's a good likelihood we come down and test 85. Now looking at the daily, we have a good chance to close above the 200 MA. After this pullback down to the 76,000 range, the 200 MA has been a resistance. We did see a false breakout, but we didn't get a candle to close above. We saw it pull right back in. Now we're back above the 200 MA and approaching the 50 MA, but we do need to break this descending resistance like I showed you guys. So on the short term, we are in an uptrend. On the midterm, we're in a downtrend. And looking at the even longer term following Bitcoin's cycle, starting from the 15K low, I'd say this trend is still intact and we are following this even longer term uptrend. So it's a trend within a trend within a trend. A short-term uptrend with a midterm downtrend, with a longer term uptrend. And I showed you guys this the other day, but this is an even longer trend going for over a decade now. Bitcoin has been following this trend since 2013. If you don't believe in Bitcoin long term, I don't know what to tell you. Now we do have some MicroStrategy news today. I also want to look at CleanSpark. They were just included into the SP600. But we have an article talking about the Fed shift and tariff relief from Trump. It mentions Trump's recent comments about the tariff announcements that are coming on April 2, demonstrating a softer stance than previous statements. It also mentions the FOMC recently, citing the analysts now predict rate cuts in the second half of the year. Why the analysts now predict? It has been expected for months now. And while the short term, we're talking over the next couple months, it's anyone's guess where the Fed goes. By the June meeting, the CME Fed Watch tool shows one rate cut as the most likely scenario. And going to the end of the year, we've looked at this many times in the past, and you can see that we're still on track for either 2 or 3 rate cuts, depending obviously on where certain inflation data brings us in the following months. And you know, the Fed was even questioned this, why the rate cuts when you're citing this potential fear of rising inflation due to tariffs? And the Fed basically said because of the uncertainty of it. If we see a positive resolution on the tariffs, a favorable negotiation for all countries, and we don't see inflation start going back sky high, then we should expect some rate cuts. However, if resolutions aren't made, if this becomes a pissing match between different countries, if inflation starts rising, the likelihood of these cuts decreases. We also had words that there would be room for talks on trade issues regarding China. And I quote, "I don't change, but the word flexibility is an important word." So there will be flexibility, but basically it's reciprocal. So, you know, the market's seeing a positive day. We might see these tariffs coming in narrower in scope, which would be a positive for the economy and something that could mitigate at least some tariff fears. We also have PCE coming up on Friday. And this is one inflation read that's just been hovering around the 2.5 area. It hit a low of 2.1 in late 2024 and started rising since, but month over month we did see finally a decrease for the first time in multiple months. If we can see it come in under 2.5%, that would show a trend. That would show that we have been decreasing from the 2.6 in December. We got a 2.5 in January. Hopefully our February reading, which comes out here at the end of March, can come in even lower. That would at least show a positive trend starting to take shape. Now we did have some PMI data today. Manufacturing PMI declined from 52.7 to 49.8, under 50, showing signs of contraction. Service PMI improved, while composite PMI also improved. Now we did have an announcement made by Michael Saylor. They bought more Bitcoin. They passed the 500,000 mark. MSTR has acquired 6,911 Bitcoin for $584 million at 84,500 per Bitcoin, and now holds 506,137 Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a swarm of cyber hornets serving the goddess of wisdom, feeding on the fire of truth, exponentially growing even smarter, faster, and stronger behind a wall of encrypted energy. Oh, so that's why he's got a bunch of bees in the picture. Now I want to show you guys CleanSpark on the chart. And while we are breaking our descending resistance here on the shorter term, we do have a more midterm descending resistance to break, similarly to Bitcoin. Back in November of 2024, CleanSpark was $17. Since then, it's been trending down. I do think this will be an important resistance, descending resistance to break out of. We're starting to approach it, but not quite there yet. As I mentioned the other day, we did fill our gap down here in the 7s, a long-standing gap from 2024 in summer, right before CleanSpark went on a massive rally on news of profitability, a second consistent profitable quarter. Unlike Bitcoin, CleanSpark has broken its long-term trend that started at the beginning of the cycle. This massive broadening pattern We recently broke under it and we've been just consolidating since then. If Bitcoin's cycle is over, then the Bitcoin miners have already topped out. If Bitcoin's going to do what it has done every cycle and ends the year higher, I do believe the Bitcoin miners are going to break 52-week highs. CleanSpark's upcoming earnings is expected to be profitable. Their last one was profitable, and this will be the first time we've seen 2 profitable quarters since before the halving, when CleanSpark was running on profitability, when there was a lot of excitement. Right before the halving cut rewards in half for the Bitcoin miners and they went back to unprofitable. We are approaching that profitable time again. CleanSpark and other Bitcoin miners did post profitable quarters in their last earnings, and some of them are expecting a profitable quarter again. But in the end, this cycle depends on Bitcoin's recovery. I do personally believe that this pullback from Bitcoin, this level of fear, similarly to what we saw during Mt. Gox when we were brought down all the way to 49K, this was just a pullback, this was just a dip before we go on to rally higher and break out of new all-time highs. You know, and we have seen this in the past where we pull back and then we go on to rally higher. In the 2020 cycle, we pulled back to a low in July of 2021 of 30,000 to then regain, break our all-time high, and test 70,000 before that cycle ended. And we also had these big pullbacks in the previous cycle, the 2017 top. While these don't look like massive dips, let me show you. This pullback, while it seems like nothing and it's like, oh look, we're clearly just going higher and going higher. This pullback at the time was a 40% pullback. More than any pullback we've had this cycle. A 40% correction. And then what did it do? It went on and broke out of new all-time highs. And then it had another correction. Another 40% correction before going on and taking out new all-time highs. Here was our 33% down on Mt. Gox fear. And on this last correction, we're down about 30%. I do think this was a pullback, a period of uncertainty, a period of tariff fear, a period of inflation woes, and Bitcoin will recover and see new all-time highs this year. But what do you guys think? Do you think it's over for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners? Do you think this is going to be the worst cycle in history? In a cycle where states, countries, public traded companies are accepting Bitcoin. Bitcoin over the long term. How could you be bearish on this chart at all? Bitcoin over the long term? Sure, there are going to be dips, there are going to be pullbacks, but Bitcoin will always recover and Bitcoin will always go higher. But anyways, tell me how you're feeling today. It's nice to see a recovery, but in my opinion, we're not out of the woods yet. Bitcoin still has to break its multi-month downtrend, and then things can definitely be looking a little better. But thanks as always for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one, and have a good rest of your day.